Emma Rodriguez pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, her worn sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor. The 22-year-old had been working double shifts for 3 months, desperately, trying to save money for her grandmother's heart medication. Tonight was different, though. Instead of cleaning empty offices, she was assigned to work during the annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala, one of New York's most exclusive charity events. The hotel's ballroom had been transformed into a glittering wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow reflections across the room, while elegantly dressed guests mingled beneath towering floral arrangements. Emma had never seen such luxury in her life. She grew up in a tiny apartment in Queens with her grandmother Rosa, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8 years old. The assignment Jackson Torres. The evening's security coordinator approached Emma near the service entrance. He was a kind man in his 50s, who had always treated the cleaning staff with respect, unlike some of the hotel management. "Emma, I need you to help with the coat check area tonight," Jackson explained, adjusting his earpiece. The regular attendant called in sick and were short-staffed. "Just hang up coats and give people their claim tickets. Think you can handle it?" Emma nodded eagerly. "The overtime pay would help cover Rosa's medical bills." "Of course, Mr. Torres. I won't let you down." "I know you won't, kid. You're one of our hardest workers." Jackson handed her a temporary name tag that read Emma Guest Services. "Just remember to smile and be polite. These people tip well if you treat them right." The world of the elite the coat check area was located near the ballroom entrance, giving Emma a perfect view of the arriving guests. She watched in amazement as women glided past in designer gowns that probably cost more than Emma earned in a year. The men wore perfectly tailored tuxedos and expensive watches that caught the light. As they moved, Emma had borrowed a black dress from her neighbor for the evening. It was simple but clean, though she felt underdressed compared to the glamorous attendees. She had pulled her long dark hair back into a neat bun and applied the small amount of makeup she owned. Hoping to look professional as the evening progressed, Emma efficiently managed the coat check, carefully organizing the expensive wraps and jackets. Most guests barely acknowledged her presence, treating her as part of the furniture. She didn't mind. She was used to being invisible in the world of the wealthy. The moment of humiliation around 9 o'clock, a group of well-dressed women approached the coat check area. Leading them was Vanessa Wright, blonde socialite in her 30s, who was known for her sharp tongue and cruel sense of humor. Vanessa wore a stunning red designer gown and dripped with diamond jewelry. "Oh my goodness, girls, look at this," Vanessa announced loudly, pointing directly at Emma. "Did they really hire someone from the cleaning crew to work the coat check? This is supposed to be a high-class event." Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as the other women joined in Vanessa's laughter. She tried to maintain her composure, focusing on organizing the coats in front of her. "I mean, seriously," Vanessa continued, her voice carrying across the nearby area. "Look at that dress. Did she get it from a thrift store? And those shoes? I wouldn't donate those to charity." The other women giggled cruelly as more guests began to take notice of the commotion. Emma's hands trembled as she reached for another coat hanger, wishing she could disappear. "Maybe she's here to clean up after us," another woman suggested with a nasty smile. "That would make more sense than putting her in a guest services position." The voice of authority, just as Emma felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. Deep, authoritative voice cut through the laughter. "Excuse me, ladies? Is there a problem here?" Emma looked up to see a tall, imposing man in an impeccably tailored black tuxedo approaching the group. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, with dark hair, piercing blue eyes, and the kind of presence that commanded immediate attention. Even from a distance, Emma could tell this was someone important. The way other guests stepped aside as he walked spoke volumes about his status. Vanessa's entire demeanor changed instantly. Her cruel smile transformed into a sweet, artificial expression as she recognized the newcomer, Christopher Hamilton. "What a wonderful surprise," Vanessa gushed, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. "We were just having a little chat about the evening service arrangements." Emma's heart stopped. Christopher Hamilton was one of the most powerful men in New York. At 5, he had built a technology empire worth billions and was regularly featured on magazine covers as one of the country's most eligible bachelors. What was he doing here, and more importantly, what did he want with this situation? An unexpected defense. Christopher's icy blue gaze swept over the group of women before settling on Emma. For a moment, their eyes met, and Emma felt something shift in the air around them. His expression softened slightly as he took in her embarrassed state and the tears she was trying to hold back. "I see," Christopher said, his voice remaining calm but carrying an undertone that made everyone in the vicinity pay attention. "And what exactly about the service arrangements was so amusing that it required public commentary?" Vanessa faltered, suddenly realizing she might have made a mistake. "Oh well, we were just noting that perhaps someone with more experience might be better suited for guest services at such an important event." "I see," Christopher repeated, stepping closer to the coat check counter. "And what makes you qualified to assess the competency of the hotel's staff arrangements?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Emma watched as Vanessa's face flushed, clearly not expecting to be put on the spot by someone of Christopher's stature. "I simply meant that we want the best possible experience for all the guests," Vanessa stammered, her confidence evaporating. A stand for dignity. Christopher turned his attention back to Emma, who was still frozen behind the counter, uncertain of what was happening or why this powerful man was involving himself in her humiliation. "Miss," he said gently, addressing Emma directly, "have you been providing good service this evening?" Emma found her voice, though it came out smaller than she intended. "Yes, sir. I've been doing my best to take good care of everyone's belongings." "And have there been any complaints about your work from the actual hotel management?" "No, sir. Mr. Torres, the security coordinator, specifically asked me to help with this position tonight." Christopher nodded approvingly before turning back to face Vanessa and her friends. His expression had returned to its previous coldness. "So let me understand this correctly," he said, his voice carrying clearly to the growing crowd of onlookers. "You've decided to publicly mock and humiliate a young woman who is working hard to provide good service, simply because you don't approve of her appearance. Is that an accurate summary of the situation?" Power of influence, Vanessa realized. She was trapped. Around them, other guests had stopped their conversations to listen to the confrontation. Many of them were Christopher's business associates, or people who depended on his goodwill for their own social standing. "Christopher, I think there might be a misunderstanding," Vanessa tried to backpedal. "We weren't trying to be mean. We were. You were just what?" Christopher interrupted. "Just exercising your perceived superiority over someone who works for a living. Just demonstrating the kind of character that makes people question whether you deserve the privileged position you hold in society." The ballroom had grown noticeably quieter as word of the confrontation spread. People pretended to continue their conversations while straining to hear every word of the exchange. An unexpected turn. What happened next surprised everyone, including Emma. Christopher Hamilton, one of the most powerful men in New York, walked around the coat check counter to stand beside her. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "I'd like you to meet Emma Rodriguez. She's not just providing excellent service tonight. She's also one of the most genuine, hardworking people in this room." Emma stared at him in shock. She had no idea why he was defending her, or how he even knew her name, but she realized he must have read from her temporary name tag. Christopher continued, his voice growing warmer as he looked at Emma. "Wow. While some people in this room seem to believe that a person's worth is determined by their clothing or their job title, I prefer to judge people by their character. And from what I can see, Emma has more character in her little finger than some people have in their entire body." The moment of recognition as Christopher spoke, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Someone was standing up for her, not because they had to, not because it benefited them, but simply because it was the right thing to do. Tears that had been threatening to fall now came for an entirely different reason. "Thank you," she whispered, looking up at Christopher with genuine gratitude. He smiled down at her, and for a moment, the crowded ballroom seemed to disappear around them. "Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect," he said softly, though his words were clearly intended for the larger audience. Vanessa and her friends had already begun to slink away, embarrassed by the public dressing down they had received. Other guests started to approach the coat check area, some offering Emma apologetic smiles or kind words. An evening transformed us. The night continued. Emma found herself in an entirely different situation than she had expected. Instead of being invisible, she was now noticed and treated with kindness by many of the guests. Christopher Hamilton had returned to his table, but Emma caught him glancing in her direction several times throughout the evening. Jackson Torres appeared at her side during a quiet moment, grinning broadly. "Girl, do you have any idea what just happened? Christopher Hamilton just stood up for you in front of half of New York's social elite. That man doesn't do anything without a reason." It shook her head, still processing the evening's events. "I don't understand why he did that. He doesn't even know me." "Maybe he knows more than you think," Jackson suggested with a knowing look. "Or maybe he's a better judge of character than most of these fancy folks." As the evening wound down and guests began collecting their belongings, Emma worked efficiently to return coats and wraps. The tips she received were indeed generous, more than she had ever earned in a single night. The unexpected encounter as the last few guests prepared to leave. Emma was surprised to see Christopher Hamilton approaching the coat check one final time. He wasn't retrieving a coat. Instead, he seemed to be waiting for the area to clear of other people. "Emma," he said, when they were relatively alone, "I hope you'll forgive me for putting you in the spotlight tonight. I don't normally involve myself in situations like that, but what those women were doing was unacceptable." "Please don't apologize," Emma replied earnestly. "You saved me from one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. I can't thank you enough." Christopher studied her face for a moment, as if trying to memorize her features. "You handled yourself with grace under very difficult circumstances. That says a lot about your character." Emma felt her cheeks warm under his intense gaze. "I just tried to do my job, and you did it well." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "Emma, would you be willing to have coffee with me tomorrow? I'd like to talk with you about something that might be of mutual benefit." Emma's heart raced. Christopher Hamilton, billionaire businessman, was asking her to coffee. It seemed impossible, like something out of a fairy tale. "Ah, yes," she managed to say. "I'd like that very much." Christopher smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she had seen from him all evening. "Excellent. There's a cafe called Meridian on 42nd Street. Would 2 o'clock work for you?" "Yes, that's perfect." As Christopher prepared to leave, he turned back one more time. "Emma, what happened tonight? The way those women treated you, that's not a reflection of your worth. Remember that." And with that, he was gone, leaving Emma standing behind the coat check counter, wondering if the entire evening had been some kind of dream. But the generous tips in her pocket and the business card Christopher had discreetly left on the counter proved it had all been very real. As Emma finally finished her duties and prepared to head home to Queens, she had no idea that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The humiliation that had threatened to crush her spirit had instead become the catalyst for an opportunity that would transform everything. The cleaning lady who had been mocked and ridiculed was about to discover that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can lead to the most extraordinary possibilities. Emma barely slept that night. She kept replaying the events at the gala, wondering if she had imagined Christopher Hamilton's intervention and invitation. Her small Queens apartment felt even smaller after experiencing the grandeur of the Metropolitan Hotel. But the generous tips from the evening would help cover Rosa's medication for another month. Rosa Rodriguez, Emma's 70-year-old grandmother, noticed her granddaughter's distracted state over breakfast. The elderly woman had raised Emma since she was 8, working multiple jobs to keep them afloat until her health began to decline. "Mia, you look like you've seen a ghost," Rosa observed, setting down her coffee cup with shaking hands. Her arthritis had been getting worse, and the heart condition required expensive medication that strained their already tight budget. "Something incredible happened at work last night, Abuela," Emma said, still unable to fully process it herself. "A very important man defended me when some wealthy women were being cruel. Then he asked me to have coffee with him today." Rosa's weathered face lit up with interest. "A good man who stands up for others is rare, Mia. What's his name?" "Christopher." Hamilton Rosa nearly dropped her cup. Even she recognized that name from the news. The Billionaire. "Emma, are you certain?" Emma nodded, showing her grandmother the elegant business card Christopher had left. The thick paper stock and embossed lettering spoke of wealth and importance. "Be careful, Mia," Rosa warned gently. "Rich men sometimes have complicated reasons for their kindness." The coffee shop meeting at exactly 2 o'clock, Emma arrived at Meridian Cafe on Surratt Street. She had chosen her best outfit, a simple navy dress and cardigan, and spent extra time on her appearance. Though she felt underdressed compared to the sophisticated clientele, Christopher was already seated at a corner table, dressed casually in dark jeans and a button-down shirt that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. He stood when he saw her approaching, a gesture of respect that surprised her. "Emma, thank you for coming," he said, pulling out her chair. "I wasn't sure you would." "Thank you for inviting me," she replied, accepting the seat. "Right. I'm still not entirely sure why you would want to have coffee with someone like me." Christopher signaled the waitress before answering. "Someone like you? You mean someone genuine, hardworking, and kind?" "Those qualities are rarer than you might think in my world," as they ordered. I chose a simple coffee, while Christopher requested an espresso shake. Found herself studying his face. In the afternoon light, he looked younger, less intimidating than he had at the gala. There were laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he wasn't always as serious as his public persona implied. "The unexpected revelation, Emma. I'm going to be direct with you because I believe honesty is the foundation of any meaningful interaction." Christopher began once their drinks arrived. "I need your help with something, and in return, I can offer you an opportunity that could change your life." Emma felt her stomach flutter with nervousness. "What kind of help?" Christopher leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice despite the busy cafe's noise. "I need a wife, not for love or romance, but for business purposes. My grandfather left a provision in his will that requires me to be married before my 36th birthday to inherit his controlling interest in Hamilton Industries. I have 6 months." Emma nearly choked on her coffee. "I'm sorry, what?" "I know it sounds insane," Christopher continued calmly, "but I'm proposing a business arrangement. Marriage contract for 2 years. You would receive $500,000 up front, plus all living expenses, health care for you and your grandmother, and another $500,000 when we divorce after the inheritance is secured." The numbers swirled in Emma's head. $1 million. It was more money than she could earn in 10 lifetimes working cleaning jobs. "Why me?" she managed to ask. "You could marry anyone. There must be dozens of women in your social circle who would jump at the chance." The reasoning behind the choice, Christopher's expression grew thoughtful. "That's exactly the problem. Women in my social circle would expect a real marriage. They'd want love, attention, a future together. I can't give those things. I'm married to my work, always have been. This arrangement would be honest from the beginning, a mutually beneficial contract with no false promises." He paused, studying her reaction. "Also, after watching how you handled yourself last night, I know you have integrity. You won't try to manipulate the situation or demand more than we agree upon. You need the money for legitimate reasons, not luxury shopping or social climbing." Emma's mind raced. The offer was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of, but it also seemed too good to be true. "How do you know I need money?" she asked suspiciously. "I had my assistant do some research," Christopher admitted without apologizing. "I know about your grandmother's medical bills, your multiple jobs, your application to nursing school that you can't afford to pursue. I'm not trying to take advantage of your situation, Emma. I'm trying to offer you a way out of it." The terms of the agreement, Christopher reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "I had my lawyers draw up a preliminary contract. No obligations. Beyond maintaining the appearance of marriage in public, separate bedrooms, separate lives for the most part. You'd attend social events with me when necessary, maybe once or twice a month. The rest of the time, you're free to pursue your education. Spend time with your grandmother, whatever you want." Emma opened the folder with trembling hands. The legal language was complicated, but the financial terms were clear and generous. Healthcare coverage for both her and Rosa, educational expenses covered. A monthly allowance that was more than she currently earned in a year. "This is overwhelming," she admitted, closing the folder. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but I need an answer by Friday." The legal process takes time, and my birthday deadline is firm. Christopher reached across the table and gently touched her hand. The contact sent an unexpected jolt of electricity through Emma's arm. No, this is unconventional, but sometimes unconventional solutions are the only ones that work. You'd be helping me secure my company's future, and I'd be helping you secure yours and your grandmother's. Internal struggle. That evening, Emma sat with Rosa in their tiny living room, explaining the incredible offer. Her grandmother listened without interruption, her experienced eyes growing more concerned as the story unfolded. Mia, this man is offering you everything we've ever dreamed of, Rosa said finally. But marriage is sacred. Even a business marriage changes you. Are you prepared for that? Emma had been wrestling with the same question all afternoon. I don't know, Abuela. It would solve all our problems. You could have the best medical care. I could go to school without working 3 jobs. But what if? I start to have real feelings for him. What if he never sees me as anything more than an employee? Rosa took her granddaughter's hands in her own weathered ones. Love is a risk, Mia, whether it comes with a contract or not. The question is, do you trust this man to treat you with respect and kindness, even if he can't love you? Emma thought about how Christopher had defended her at the gala, how he had been honest about his motivations, how he had treated her with more respect in 2 conversations than many people showed her in months of interaction. I think I do trust him, she said slowly. Then maybe you should take the leap. Life rarely offers second chances like this. The decision Friday arrived faster than Emma expected. She had spent the week researching Christopher Hamilton, reading everything she could find about his business practices, his charitable giving, his reputation. Everything pointed to a man who was demanding but fair, successful but not ruthless. She called the number on his business card and arranged to meet him at his office in the Hamilton Industries building, the 40-story glass tower in Midtown. Manhattan was intimidating, but Emma forced herself to walk through the marble lobby and take the elevator to the executive floor. Christopher's assistant, Tricia Hamilton, no relation, despite the name, was a professional woman in her 50s, who greeted Emma with surprising warmth. Mr. Hamilton is expecting you, Patricia said, leading Emma to a set of double doors. He's been quite anxious for your answer. Christopher's office was exactly what Emma expected from a billionaire CEO, floored-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture, walls lined with awards and photos of him with various dignitaries and celebrities. But there were also personal touches. A photo of an elderly couple who must have been his grandparents. A small collection of vintage books, a chess set that looked well used. Emma, Christopher said, rising from behind his massive desk. Thank you for coming. Have you made your decision? Emma took a deep breath, thinking of Rosa's medical bills, her own deferred dreams, and the genuine kindness Christopher had shown her. Yes, she said firmly. I accept your proposal. The arrangement begins. The relief that crossed Christopher's face was unmistakable. Thank you. I promise you won't regret this decision. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of legal documents, financial arrangements, and practical planning. Christopher's lawyers had prepared a comprehensive contract that protected both parties' interests. Emma would move into Christopher's penthouse apartment the following week. They would be married in a small civil ceremony in 1 month, followed by a larger reception for business associates and social contacts. We'll need to create a believable backstory for how we met and fell in love, Christopher explained as they reviewed the timeline. Something that explains the quick engagement without raising too many questions. We could say we met at the charity gala, Emma suggested. That's true, at least partially. Perfect. Love at first sight. Whirlwind romance. My grandfather always said he knew my grandmother was the one the moment he saw her. People will find it romantic. As Emma prepared to leave, Christopher walked her to the elevator. Emma, I want you to know that while this is a business arrangement, I will treat you with the respect and consideration you deserve. You're taking a big risk trusting me with this, and I don't take that lightly. Thank you, Christopher. I believe you. As the elevator doors closed, Emma caught her reflection in the polished metal. In less than a month, she would be Mrs. Christopher Hamilton, wife to one of the most powerful men in America. The scared
humiliated cleaning lady from the gala was about to become someone entirely new. But as the elevator descended toward the
lobby, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this transformation might involve more than just a change in her bank account and social status. Looking into Christopher's eyes, she had glimpsed something that made her wonder if this purely business arrangement might become something more complicated than either of them anticipated. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Emma's life had transformed beyond recognition. She now lived in Christopher's penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, a space so large her old apartment could have fit in the master bathroom. Christopher had been the perfect gentleman, giving her the guest wing and maintaining careful boundaries while they prepared for their public debut as a couple. "Your posture needs work," declared Sophia Chen, the etiquette coach Christopher had hired to prepare Emma for high society. The elegant woman in her 40s had spent 2 decades training diplomats, wives, and CEO spouses. "Remember, you're not just Emma Rodriguez anymore. You're about to become Emma Hamilton, wife of a billionaire. People will watch your every move." Emma practiced walking across the penthouse living room, balancing a book on her head while Sophia critiqued her stride. The transformation felt surreal, like playing dress-up in someone else's life. "Better," Sophia approved. "Now, let's review the guest list for your engagement party. We'll need to know who these people are and why they matter." Party would be Emma's first major test as Christopher's fiancé. 200 of New York's most influential people would attend, all curious about the mysterious woman who had captured the city's most eligible bachelor. The engagement party, the Hamilton family estate in the Hamptons, had been transformed into a fairy tale setting for the engagement celebration. Emma stood in front of her bedroom mirror, wearing a stunning emerald green gown that brought out her eyes. The dress had cost more than she used to earn in 6 months, but Christopher insisted she needed to look the part. "You look beautiful," Christopher said from the doorway, resplendent in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. Over the past weeks, Emma had begun to appreciate his quiet strength and dry sense of humor. Their evening conversations over dinner had become the highlight of her days. "I'm terrified," Emma admitted, smoothing the silk fabric nervously. "What if someone realizes I don't belong here?" Christopher approached her, his hand settling gently on her shoulders. "You belong wherever you choose to be, Emma. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The warmth in his voice made Emma's heart flutter in a way that had nothing to do with their business arrangement. She was developing feelings for her fake fiancé, a complication neither of them had anticipated. Meeting the Elitha party was in full swing when Emma and Christopher made their grand entrance. Photographers' flashes sparkled like stars as they posed for pictures, Christopher's arm possessively around Emma's waist. To the outside world, they looked like a couple deeply in love. "Christopher, darling," a tall, striking woman in her 40s approached them, air-kissing Christopher's cheeks. "You must introduce me to your lovely fiancée, Rebecca Foster. This is Emma," Christopher said smoothly. Emma Rebecca is one of New York's premier art dealers. Rebecca's assessment of Emma was swift and calculating. "What a lovely dress. Dear Valentino, isn't it? You have exquisite taste." Emma had no idea who Valentino was, but she smiled graciously. "Thank you. Christopher helped me choose it." "How wonderful to have a man with such refined sensibilities," Rebecca purred, though her eyes remained sharp and evaluating. As the evening progressed, Emma found herself navigating conversations about art exhibitions, charity boards, and European vacation homes. Christopher stayed close, smoothly redirecting conversations when they ventured into territory where Emma might struggle. The confrontation midway through the party. Emma excused herself to freshen up in the powder room. She was touching up her lipstick when the door opened behind her. Well, came a familiar, unpleasant voice. "If it isn't the little cleaning girl playing dress-up?" Emma turned to find Vanessa Wright, the socialite who had humiliated her at the charity gala. Vanessa looked stunning in a silver gown, but her expression was pure malice. "Hello, Vanessa," Emma said calmly, though her heart was racing. "Did you really think you could fool everyone?" Vanessa sneered, stepping closer. "I know exactly who you are. A gold-digging nobody who somehow managed to trick Christopher Hamilton into this ridiculous charade." Emma felt her old insecurities rising. But then she remembered Christopher's words about belonging wherever she chose to be. You're right about one thing, Emma said, meeting Vanessa's gaze steadily. I am nobody special. I'm just a woman who works hard, treats people with kindness, and doesn't need to tear others down to feel good about herself. If that threatens you, that says more about you than it does about me. Vanessa's face flushed with anger. You won't last 6 months in this world. Christopher will see through your act eventually. Maybe, Emma replied calmly. But at least I'll know I conducted myself with dignity. A public declaration and known to both women, Christopher had been searching for Emma and overheard the end of their confrontation. As Emma emerged from the powder room, she found him waiting in the hallway, his expression thunderous. Are you all right? He asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. I'm fine. Vanessa was just being Vanessa. Christopher's jaw clenched. No one speaks to my fiancé that way. Before Emma could protest, Christopher strode into the main ballroom and called for attention. The party guests gradually quieted, sensing drama in the air. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher announced, his voice carrying clearly across the room. I want to take a moment to talk about the woman I'm going to marry. Emma felt her cheeks burn as all eyes turned to her. Christopher reached for her hand. Drawing her to his side, 3 months ago I met Emma at a charity event. I was immediately struck not by her beauty, though she is breathtaking, but by her character. In a room full of people trying to impress each other, she was simply herself, genuine, kind, and strong. He turned to look directly at Emma, his blue eyes intense with emotion that seemed far too real for their fake relationship. Some of you might think we come from different worlds, and you're right. I come from a world of privilege and shortcuts. Emma comes from a world where you work for everything you get, where you take care of your family no matter the cost, where your word means something. I'm the lucky one in this relationship. The room was absolutely silent now, guests hanging on every word. So if anyone here has a problem with my choice in a wife, Christopher continued, his gaze finding Vanessa in the crowd, I suggest you examine your own values before questioning hers. The applause that followed was thunderous. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by Christopher's public defense and the genuine emotion in his voice. The realization later that night. After the last guests had departed, Emma and Christopher sat on the estate's terrace overlooking the ocean. The formal party attire had been replaced with comfortable clothes, and the pretenses of the evening had fallen away. Thank you for what you said tonight, Emma said softly. You didn't have to go that far. Yes, I did, Christopher replied, his voice unusually serious. Emma, I need to tell you something. She turned to face him, surprised by his tone. This arrangement was supposed to be purely business. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being fake for me. He met her gaze directly. I've fallen in love with you. Emma's heart stopped. The words she had been hoping to hear and dreading in equal measure hung in the air between them. Christopher, she began, but he held up a hand. I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I know this complicates everything. But I couldn't pretend anymore, especially after tonight. You deserve to know the truth. Emma stood and walked to the terrace railing, staring out at the moonlit ocean. Her mind raced through the past month, the gentle way Christopher treated her grandmother during their visits, the patient way he helped her navigate his world, the small kindnesses he showed when he thought no one was watching. I'm scared. She admitted finally, of what? Of believing this is real, of letting myself love you and then discovering it was all just part of the performance. Christopher rose and moved to stand beside her, careful not to touch her, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. It's real, Emma, the most real thing in my life. The wedding 2 weeks later, Emma Rodriguez became Emma Hamilton in a private ceremony at the estate, surrounded by only close friends and family. Rosa had cried happy tears throughout the service, having fallen completely under Christopher's spell during their courtship. But it was the moment after the ceremony, when Christopher kissed his bride, that Emma knew for certain her feelings were returned. The kiss was tender, reverent, and filled with promises that had nothing to do with business contracts. I love you too, she whispered against his lips, feeling his sharp intake of breath. Thank God, he murmured back, holding her close. I was starting to think I'd have to spend the next 2 years convincing you. 6 months later, Emma stood in the nursery of their penthouse apartment, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Where their first child was growing, Christopher's inheritance had been secured months ago, but they had torn up the divorce papers without ever filing them. "Mrs. Hamilton?" Christopher's voice came from the doorway. Even after 6 months of marriage, he sometimes used her formal title teasingly. "Yes, Mr. Hamilton," she replied, turning to smile at her husband. "Your grandmother is here for dinner, and she's asking if we've chosen names yet." Emma laughed, moving into Christopher's arms. "Tell her we're still negotiating." "I love you," Christopher said, the words still sounding slightly amazed, as if he couldn't quite believe his luck. "I love you too," Emma replied, meaning it with every fiber of her being. The cleaning lady who had been humiliated at a charity gala had not only married the richest man in the room, she had found a love that transformed them both. Sometimes, the most extraordinary love stories begin with the most ordinary moments. And sometimes the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to open your heart to unexpected possibilities. As they walked together toward the dining room where Rosa waited with stories and laughter, Emma reflected on how much her life had changed. She had gained not just financial security, but a family, a purpose, and a love that proved fairy tales could come true even for a girl from Queens, who believed she was nobody special. The humiliation that had once threatened to break her spirit had instead led her to a love that would last a lifetime.